welcome back to Inside the Minds of Authors. We are doing live podcasting for all of you guys who enjoy our amazing program of Inside the Minds. It is a fabulous Saturday here in Texas. As you can tell, I'm now recording from the home, so we are on location for all of you guys. So thank you so much for joining us. If you're new to the podcast, go ahead and subscribe. You don't want to miss a single episode. We have passionate authors coming every single time bringing you their incredible books. So we're excited to be here again. So hopefully have a seat, enjoy. This is going to be an amazing opportunity. I have the talented Mr. Jeffrey Dunn talking to us about his book, Whiskey Rebel. So we're going to bring him on. And remember, you can ask us questions because we're live. So I'll be looking down to make sure I don't miss any of your questions. We're here live on Facebook and YouTube. And because you guys are here to talk to our amazing guest, we're going to bring him on. Hello, Mr. Jeffrey. How are you?
I'm wonderful, DC. It's so good to be here with you and all of your listeners.
We are excited to have you. It's going to be an amazing conversation. And because you were here on Inside the Minds, we start every episode with a book reading. So I'm going to pass it over to you so you can introduce the book, and we're going to get started.
Very, very, very good. Okay, so we have right here, we've got Whiskey Rebel. And I need to get this set up so you can actually see it. Why? There's a delay. All right, Whiskey Rebel back here. We got it. This is a little bit of whimsy with a whole lot of depth as the book moves along. It looks into freedom. What does the American dream mean? How do these characters deal with trauma? And I'll read you from toward the beginning of the book. This is called The True History of Sazerac. Because it's easy to overlook another man's faults when loneliness gnaws the soul, and since my options were the man in front of me, a red harvester ant down at my feet, or a buzzard high overhead, I chose the man who offered me his bottle. I was also curious about something the man said, just as long as we don't run into any DeMilos, but I saved that question for later. As we walked along the old Blewett Pass Road, heading toward Washington State 97, we nipped at Hamilton's bottle. And as the bottle went back and forth, I recall the time my dad told me to pay close attention to what a man drinks. He said it was a window into a man's soul, and then my dad said, "Boy, any man who orders a cheap shot and a beer is off to a good start." And if there's one thing my dad understood, it was drinking. So I paid close attention when Hamilton began to preach on his bottle. "You see, this ain't just any old bottle. Thing is, this once had rattlesnake oil in it made by the Yak East Medicine Company of San Francisco, California, and Portland, Oregon. It was the genuine article, and just like that, it cured all and any of your aches and pains." Sounds like a pretty good racket. Yeah, but I can do the Yankees Medicine Company one better by filling this old bottle with a Sazerac of my own making. That's what we're drinking? That we are. And what exactly is Sazerac? Curious. I like that. And since you asked, Sazerac has a long and glorious history. All goes back to Louis of the Roaches. He was drinking with painters and poets and czars and all them Frenchies, and he told them boys, "I can do this absinthe you're drinking one better. Here, let me spike it with some whiskey. And then I'll do that one better. I'll sprinkle in some dandelion and mint leaves. And then I'll add a sugar cube. Now, Vinnie Van G, tell me that don't give you a starry night." And you know what old Louis put in every bottle of Sazerac? A roach, of course. It was his family's totem, so there's always a roach at the bottom of every bottle. It makes it ostentatious. Well, right off the bat, I thought Hamilton Chance was a tornado twisting inside a kaleidoscope, and my first instinct was to proceed slowly until a suitable exit route appeared. But following close behind was my second instinct, one that told me to follow the intriguing thread running through this man's homespun weave. Sure, some of his word choice was hit or miss, but his replacements weren't pure nonsense. I've been known to say one thing and mean another, so I could see how he switched out absinthe for absence. And sure, His grasp of history was all over the place. He had Russian czars confused with French kings and some long dead Louis chatting up Vincent van Gogh. And then there was the cockroach thing. I guess he had that confused with the worm in the tequila bottle. But all that aside, I thought it was kind of clever the way he connected his crackpot Sazerac history with Van Gogh's famous painting. Yes, maybe I should have chosen safety first, but that's not how I was raised. I grew up in the timber town of Packwood, Washington, and my dad worked in the woods, falling, bucking, and yarding trees. He was an all Packwood man, which is to say, if he wasn't out working, he was elk hunting or salmon fishing or drinking, and because of who he was and who he associated with, he kept a long string of characters coming my way. To be clear, these characters were not the people from whom we get the phrase men and women of good character. There was nothing upstanding, middle of the road, or church going, namely respectable, about the folks of Packwood, Washington. I don't recall anyone in Packwood ever being described as upstanding, and if so, such a person would have been targeted and cut down to size. The characters I'm talking about were of two types: people who were socially reactive and people who lived singular lifestyles. The socially reactive ones were like the old man who sat by himself in the Packwood Tavern, and when someone spoke, he hollered something disagreeable across the bar, got up, and started a fight. Or the woman who had driven away husbands, family members, and friends, and then moved to Packwood not to drink at the tavern, but to curl up at home with her BFF bottle of wine. Or the man who built a bomb shelter with his own two hands, moved in, and spent every night on his car battery powered ham radio talking up the impending demolition of the world. I won't go so far as to say that my dad was one of these, but there's no doubt that he had an affinity for those sorts of folks. He knew how to talk to them. He sympathized with them. And when he and I were together, he introduced me to them. Over time, I became accustomed to keeping company with those my dad considered his tribe. These folks' battles were usually personal, but for my dad, it was strictly political. He refused to cut timber for big companies. He talked a lot about the international workers of the world and used words like capitalist masters and industrial democracy. And he often railed against being thrown out like a discarded machine, and yet never joined the IWW or any other union. Why? Because Logger Bob Tawney simply wasn't a joiner, and although he was a skilled woodsman, he was at best a seasonal employee. And then there were people who lived singular lifestyles. These characters were never unpleasant and were always easy to talk to, but other people considered them weird. Take the woman whose building was one third home, one third barn for chickens, rabbits, and goats, and one third wildlife refuge. She had a northern spotted owl who nested above her bed and flew out at night only to return in the morning, or the man who squatted in an abandoned logging company bunkhouse and supported himself by foraging and hiring himself out as an invasive species bounty hunter, or the woman who lived in a treehouse and sold sculptures that she made from deadwood and other forest objects. These singular characters were my mom's folks. As librarian, she catered to them by collecting a complete set of the whole Earth catalog, as well as books on wildlife husbandry, deep ecology, woodcraft, and back to nature sculpture. Because our home was too small to satisfy my mom's all consuming book obsession, the Packwood Library was her first home and our sleeping quarters her second. Furthermore, because my mom was also a distinctive character, being a librarian wasn't enough. She didn't just open up in the morning and lock up at night. She did more than simply check out and shelve books. A few of her folks even called her Pastor Beth and considered the Packwood Library her church, the sanctuary where she offered up readings, heard everyone's confessions, and on rainy days under the fluorescent lights, planned all tomorrow's services. As for her, me, her little punksy, I bopped out the door every morning and headed to school or to the woods. But when school was shut and rain was falling, which was a lot of the time, Pastor Bess stuffed me in a rain poncho and whisked me off to her library. Once inside, she peeled off the poncho, sat me next to the window, and handed me a book. At first, I read the usual children's books, but soon I graduated to history accounts, nature guides, and science reports. And as I matured, she slipped me Richard Brautigan, who opened my imagination, put a pen in my hand, and started me scribbling my own stories. Next came Jack Kerouac, Jerzy Kosinski, John Irvin, and Tom Robbins. My eyes feasted on art and photography books. I never got enough. All this goes to explain why I stayed and listened to Hamilton chants, a man woven from both threads of my upbringing, a man who already seemed to me both reactive and singular, and the man who, right after telling me about Vinnie Van G, went on to say, and that's only the half of it. Oh, those Frenchies have been living in communes since the Romans mixed it up with the Vikings. It's crazy over there. Been that way since caveman times. And and all that's right here in that little bottle you're pulling on, and I'll let you in on my own little secret. What's that? Thing is, absence, well, it's hard to come by. And even when it comes my way, it's downright expensive. So you know what I do? Can't say that I do. Instead of absence and a sugar cube, I'd drop a black licorice gummy bear in a bottle of cheap bourbon. And if you're not in a big ass hurry and wait for the gummy to dissolve, who's to know? Great, huh? Great? It's got a head start, I replied. Got a lot of secrets, you know. Got to get by. Whiskey
Hello.
Rebel. Hello, DC.
Oh my
Hope that
God.
was fun.
It was absolutely a thrill, and I have questions. I'm sure our viewers have questions. So we're going to jump in. Let's start from the beginning. What is this
Sure.
book about? And where did this idea come from? Because I'm curious. Tell us.
Absolutely. Well, as you can probably tell, have a fertile imagination and have been writing since I was 14. And when I retired, I got a chance to get to the point where I wasn't teaching teenagers English, and I'm a writer of place, and so all of my books deal with the natural history, deal with the human history, and in Central Washington, it's a very singular geography. And in the book, Punxsutawney, whose name is a play on the city where the groundhog's from in Pennsylvania, he he describes it as being like the moon, and so I put that together with this idea of the 1794 American Whiskey Rebellion, and Punksy's telling the story, but the whiskey rebel, he comes from Western Pennsylvania and he wants to make whiskey, and it's a place you can get lost. It's a place you could do this, and then you bring in other singular sorts of characters, having lived and taught in the state of Washington in small logging towns. You get to know folks like this, and so you bring them in, and the novel just rolls from there.
I was cracking up from the beginning and a little squirmish
Good.
because you said cockroach, and I was like, oh, is that is that real? Because I'm like, I don't think I ever want to taste this whiskey. Is it real?
Oh, this is it's a play off the tequila that has a worm at the bottom,
Uh huh.
and you don't need to know the history, but Hamilton's brain, he does a lot of word replacement, and so he gets the cockroach confused with the worm. And this Louis, there's a Louis who was Louis Rocher, and he thinks it's Roach, and it's all just one jumble in his head. So no, there's no whiskey with roaches at the bottom unless you put one in yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. Love the concept. Love everything you're bringing to the table. So, how long were you working on this book, and how much research did you do for it?
Um, when I write, we nowadays we have computers. We got a research library on on our laps, and so I start with characters and a place, and I research the place. I use a lot of Google Earth if I can't visit myself. And my wife took me to Moses Coulee, where this takes place. She lived there for 4 months as a teenager, and it just seemed like this perfect place to go. So in terms of research, I just go back and forth. I write a scene, I write some dialogue that then I get a curious question. Well, what about this? What about that? And I find things like off the main road, which is called Palisades Road, is this little gully of a place called Whiskey Dick Creek. I said, well, that's where the whiskey goes, and it all just goes together. It becomes a flow. It becomes a dialectic, whatever you want to call it. Um, and so, sure, it's just back and forth, research, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. What's the place look like? What are the animals and plants like? Who are the people that have lived there? What happened 100 years? The questions never end, but it's all material to use. It's
Do
fun.
you do you do any outlining, or are you going with the story as it takes you? How does that work?
Very little. So
Okay.
I do a lot of revision. So I get going and I let the characters tell me what seems to be the next thing. Um, Kurt Vonnegut, one piece of writing advice I got for him is when you think things are boring, bring in a new character. And now it isn't anymore. And so you bring in a new character. Well, that's a whole new dynamic. That's a whole new bunch of things to research. And so my writing process is simply I write like 200 to 300 words a day, and then I go back and read those and revise them the next day and add to it, and then I go back to the beginning and go through and revise as I go, and I get about 10 pages in and I can drop the first 10 or the first 5 that I'm doing, um, just so everything holds together. And when I get to the end, I go back and do 2 or 3 huge revisions anyway, because I don't want to lose the inspiration. You can always cut, you can always add, but you don't want to lose the electricity, um, of where the characters are taking you. And these guys are fun, and the 2 ladies who come in and the Native American in the story who show up, stir the pot in big ways. So they're fun too.
You mentioned inspiration. You have all these pieces, you got locations moving. Where does the inspiration when you start writing come from? Like, where does this whole, ooh, I need this?
Place. It's just place.
Okay.
Um, I I've never had a home. I This is my home now in Spokane, Washington, and it'll be my first son passed away, and so my wife, and we'll be buried next to him. So that has made this home. But always moved around a lot. Every place, there is no place on this earth that doesn't have history that isn't fascinating. But it's just a matter of finding out. It's a matter of finding out the vultures overhead and learning about vultures. Or we've got a raven friend up the hill who raises a family every year. What's going on with the ravens or dragonflies? The geology, people you meet, you listen to conversation. It's all there, and the limits are the place where you are and the kinds of people who live there. But within that's a kaleidoscope to work with, and the place speaks first. My first big novel, Radio Free in Olympia, has a multitude of voices because I wanted the place to speak. This book and my previous one, Wildcat's a little more streamlined. It's not quite so complicated, not quite so many voices, but it's kind of the same idea. It's all about place first, and all the places are very different.
I love it. You are pulling from all these different things. What do you want the reader to get out of this book? And what is your intent that you will love to be like, yes, they got it?
um, I find I in a lot of these interviews I've done, I find it fascinating that the people I talk to assume that fiction writers or poets are after theme and ideas like it's an essay. And in my mind, of course, there something needs to make sense. I mean, it's not schizophrenic speech. I mean, that's not what you're shooting for. But my aim is to have each word, each phrase, then each sentence, then each paragraph, then each page interesting in a way that you want to keep going. And not, I write very short chapters. So not in a way that you have to read the whole book. Although a lot of reviewers have said I've read it in one reading. Because I like to read a chapter, put it down in like a box of chocolates, come back and look forward to reading it the next day. But you can read it any way you want. But the deal is that I want that all to be so interesting, like you're living it, like these are your people, and you're taking this magical carpet ride with them. And when you come to the end, you're going to decide what it like life. What did all that mean? And in this book, there are themes. It's the characters talk about freedom and what's the American dream, because they live in a place where the game's rigged against you and you can't make it come true. So they're struggling to find their place in America as young people who don't have means. How do you get by? How do you create some sort of community? What is home? That's all in there. And in the last chapter, just so people go, oh, I'm just going to be frustrated, I'm going to throw it against the wall because it won't make any sense. Punksy, he's the deep thinker, and he's writing this book trying to figure out what this is about. He's my fictional stand-in for me, if there is such a thing, because the other characters aren't. They're characters I learned from. But at the end, he stops and he says, "So that's the story, and I'm trying to figure it out as I go. So what do I think?" And he tells you what he thinks at the end, and then you can decide whether you think he's full of it or not, but and what all that means. But hope it was a good ride. That's what I want it to be, is a good ride.
I love it. I don't know if authors, we all have a theme that we have in mind. There are tropes in fiction that most people look for, but I think at
Sure.
the end of the day, I love the fact that you said you want people to have a good ride, and that's always very exciting to me. So, as a writer, we're always busy. What are you working on now? Can you tell us what is your next project? Do you have one?
Yes, I write on Medium, Substacks, or cultural analysis, whimsical, not like anybody's ever, not like other people are writing. Let's put it that way. But I've got a big project. I'm 69 years old, and I don't know how many more years I have when my brain will keep cooking like this. But my place now is right where I live. And so all of my research is the Spokane, what we call the Inland Northwest, which is a very unique place. The Spokane River, the Little Spokane River, the flora and fauna around here. And I have two main characters. Um, a young woman who isn't blind but refuses to open her eyes, and she's an infant at the very beginning. She comes from probably Native American, at least half Native American parents. And the other one is the reincarnation of St. Patrick, who has been reincarnated along his life, his soul journey. Um, he's become a Buddhist bodhisattva, and he's reborn in Spokane. And somehow this woman, now that she's grown up from her adopted childhood into with two Native American parents who own a bar, and this reincarnation of St. Patrick, they will meet on the streets of Spokane, and then we'll see where that goes. They're going to take me. They're going to take me on that ride.
I love it. I love the fact that you let your characters take you on this ride and you're just willing to go down the line with them. So that is absolutely awesome. So tell me, Miss Jeffrey, what advice would you give to an up and coming author who is interested in taking these rides with our characters?
Well, there's two kinds of writers, and you mentioned outlining. There are outliners, and I call them left. We all use both sides of our brain. Saying left, right, that's a nonsense. But there are folks who like to live in a much more, what I would call, format. If there's formats to historical romance, to romance fiction, to sci-fi, to all those kinds of formats, and there are things that readers expect. But if you're like me, that's where the advice is. You really have to not feel that there's something wrong with you because you feel that's an impediment, and just open yourself up to as much experience as possible. Listen, walk, listen to your inside when you meditate, sit outside in nature, sit in a bar and listen. Uh, Talk to as many people as possible. I'm having the best time selling books at farmers markets because I meet people, and sure, they want to hear what my books are about, but I want to also hear their life stories and make that connection. And suddenly that sells more books than me just selling a book. So, yeah, it's just be open to experience as much as possible, inside and outside.
I love it. I love it. That's such a great advice. And sometimes I think as authors, we tend to get consumed in our own bubble and forget that the world is still there.
Oh, for
So,
sure. Hmm.
absolutely. Mr. Jeffrey, tell us, where can our viewers or listeners find you, where they can learn more about the book? Where can they connect with you?
Yes. So the easiest way is my website, Jeffrey Dunn Spokane, Spokane. It's the city in Eastern Washington. The So it's jeffreydunnspokane.com, and there stuff about me, and there are things about the books that I write, links to my Medium where I write there, and some examples of what I have on Medium, and which is under Jeffrey Dunn. And then on Substack, I go under my name is Culture Raven, but there's links right off my website. And all the books are at all your bookstores. You can order from any bookstore if it's not on the shelf. And you can just go to Amazon, my name, the titles of my books. It's all right there. So I'm not hard to find. I'm out there. I'm on the net. I'm on the interwebs, as I like to say, like Hamilton chants. We're on the interwebs.
Ooh, I love it. And it's easy to find. So for our viewers and listeners, you can absolutely check it out. And Mr. Jeffrey, before you leave us, are you ready for the lightning round?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Bring it on.
Super easy, so don't think too hard. Coffee or tea?
Coffee. Oh my goodness. Cups and
Nice.
cups a day. I like tea also, but I do both.
Okay. Home cooked meals or restaurants?
We do a lot of home cooked meals because we're careful with what we eat, and do a really good restaurant once a week.
Ooh, I like that mix. Pancakes or waffles?
Pancakes.
Okay. Mystery or fantasy?
Oh, fantasy. Oh yeah.
So here's a
Get
little.
get wild with it.
I like it. Here's a little different. Let's see how you do. One word that best describes you.
Me. Wow. Um, I will use Punksy's word from the novel. I'll say singular.
Okay.
I've been told there aren't a whole lot of people like me, and that's, for some it's a compliment, and for some not so much.
I like it. That's a really good way. Mr. Jeffrey, it has been truly a pleasure having you, sending you lots of congratulations and blessings
Same,
on
DC.
this. Any closing remarks for us?
No, just keep watching, keep listening to Inside the Minds of Authors, because DC Gomez, she's a blessing. She's one of the what Martha Stewart used to say, good things. DC Gomez is a good thing in Texas. It's a good thing.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Jeffrey. Truly a pleasure. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, taking time out
Thank you.
of your schedule, sending you lots of blessings. Thank you. Thank you. To our viewers, go ahead and subscribe. You don't want to miss the Substack. You don't want to miss the Medium. Check out Mr. Jeffrey. So you can tell a nice mix of, elegance, culture, and a lot of humor and a little bit of everything. So thank you so much for joining us. It has been a pleasure. If you are watching us live, I have one more guest coming this afternoon, about another 30 minutes on the hour, so come and join us. But it has been truly a pleasure. And if you're listening to the podcast, make sure to subscribe. You don't want to miss a single episode. We're here bringing you amazing authors all the time. So have an amazing Saturday, everybody. Bye.